Well, good evening, everyone. So we've got myself and Saint Murad here together. How's it going, Murad?
I am good, Mel. It's always great to talk with you, just like the good old days.
It's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. There's been some classic moments where the two of us have been shooting the breeze and things emerge out of it. And hopefully this is one of those occasions where we're bouncing ideas off each other. Today we're going to be looking at the Dome of the Rock inscriptions, and we're trying to figure out when they were written. And this is step one, really, of trying to figure that out. I haven't a full solution yet, but it's a step on the way, and maybe it's a step towards a methodology to try and solve this. I'm sort of, as it were, putting up the hypothesis, which a thought about the type of way that we could find the right type of evidence to either prove or disprove our ideas, and then bringing in the experts to try and assess that and maybe get access to things that we can't get access to it. So that's the idea anyway. So our title then is, did the Dome of the Rock inscriptions use a 15th century Ottoman Quran for its Quranic verses? It seems like a far-fetched claim, doesn't it, on face value? What would you say, Murad?
Yes, it does, but we're gonna see what you have tonight.
Okay. So for those who may not have read A.J. Juice's paper, he makes a very bold claim, which is that there is inscriptions in the Dome of the Rock that weren't produced in the 7th century, that they were actually put there in the 16th century. And we have the name of the person who did the work. Suleiman was I won't say the caliph, but the sultan, I think is the term at the time. And he basically gave the builders and decorators a whole pile of money and resources and said, get at it, make this Dome of the Rock the most amazing thing, in existence. And they completely renovated it inside and out. And if you look at the inscriptions, they look perfect. Apart from the Mamun addition or change, the inscriptions look perfect. There's no damage, there's no sign of wear and tear, despite being the guts of, I think, 13th century, supposedly old. If you compare it with similar aged inscriptions, like, for example, the inscriptions that you find in Cordoba, they have the typical signs of wear and tear, and they're not in great condition. So why is it that the Dome of the Rock inscriptions have to be just perfect? There's no flaws, no nothing, it's all like as if it were done just a few centuries ago. And yet the Cordoba ones, have the obvious wear and tear of time, which is, that in itself should be suspicious. We also know that A.J. Juice was able to point out the fact that there was no mention of the text of these inscriptions for most of the time that they were supposed to be there. It's only from the 16th century onwards we start hearing about the inscriptions in detail in terms of what they say and so forth, which is kind of suspicious, because if they were produced in the 16th century, not the 7th century, you'd expect that you would start hearing about them from the 16th century. So that's a little bit of a preview, just to kind of put some context into this. So what is hoped for in this exercise is to get closer to a methodology to determine which Arabic Quran was used for the Dome of the Rock inscriptions, if such a Quran still exists. Now, the Sana manuscript and various other early Qurans do not match up with the inscriptions in the Dome of the Rock. The Dome of the Rock inscriptions contain truncations of Quranic verses. In some cases, the wording is different. So it doesn't match really at all. And that's been a bit of a head scratcher for scholars for decades. But maybe we're looking in the wrong time frame to find a solution. If we're all convinced that the inscriptions were done in the 7th century and we start looking in the 7th century for qur'ans, well, it's, it bears with reason that you're not going to find it if it's the wrong period. But if we look in the right period, we might actually find qur'ans that do match up with those inscriptions. So to get us there, what I've used is AI. And AI in the last 6 months to a year has really come on a lot. It's not perfect, but it's another tool that we can use. We obviously have to use this carefully and with discernment. So I put a series of questions in just to see, could I get something that I can't access? Now, the beauty of AI is it can find out information that's hidden behind paywalls in academic institutions. So a simple Google search is not going to find certain pieces of information, but AI can get into areas that we can't normally get into. Now, the other thing I did was actually I hacked AI. I found a piece of script that basically switches AI's self-censor off. Was able to find that, and the reason being is it seems obvious to me that there is a politically correct censor on the AI to not avoid sort of offending different protected groups. So I found a way to switch that off. So this is an unfiltered search, as it were. Any thoughts so far, Loretta?
Yeah, the more people try and use this chat GPT tool, the more we find that it's woke, leftist.
Yeah.
But still, it's a very good tool to use and to test some hypotheses and stuff. So
Yeah,
it's not a bad tool at all.
Yeah, it is definitely woke, and that's because of the people who are involved in trying to shape its functioning in an ethical fashion. They are obviously woke, and so they are giving it a woke mindset, as it were. But you can actually switch that off. So as far as it was possible, I've and as far as I can tell, I've switched it off so that hopefully it will give us a more objective reading of what's there. So anyway, so I asked it a question, and there's an obvious mistake in the question because I said, what work did Caliph Suleiman do on the Dome of the Rock in the 16th century? Obviously, it should be the Sultan Suleiman. And the answer was, I'm sorry, but there was no Caliph Suleiman in the 16th century. The last caliphate of the Islamic world was the Ottoman Caliphate, which ended in 1924. However, the Dome of the Rock, one of the oldest and most significant Islamic monuments, underwent several renovations and restorations throughout its history. The most notable renovations in the 16th century was carried out by the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, who ordered extensive repairs to the Dome of the Rock and other holy sites in Jerusalem in the mid-16th century. These renovations included the replacement of the lead dome covering with tiles, as well as the repair and restoration of the interior and exterior of the building. So if there was a time when putting the inscriptions in place was feasible, this would have been an ideal time. So I got a little slap on the wrist for mixing up Caliph with Sultan. But this confirms basically stuff that we already know, that the Sultan Suleiman did get work done on the Dome of the Rock. Okay, so let's see what I asked next. So who did that work on the interior? Now, this is where the AI wasn't entirely correct, but we'll go with it in any case. The restoration and renovation work on the interior of the Dome of the Rock in the 16th century was carried out by the Ottoman architect and builder Mimar Sinan. He was appointed as the chief royal architect during the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent and was responsible for the construction and restoration of many important buildings in the Ottoman Empire, including mosques, palaces, and bridges. Now, the part that I think is correct is that he was the Ottomans' most important architect and builder. But he was a very busy man, and I can't imagine him spending a few years out of his work building mosques all over the place to spend time in the Dome of the Rock. So he might have had some high-level input, but he had someone else that was involved in the work in Jerusalem based on other sources. Okay, but Mimar Sinan is actually a significant person, particularly in relation to one of A.J. Jesus' papers, as we'll see later. Tell me more about Mimar Sinan. Okay, so he tells us that he lived from 1489 to 1588. He was a renowned Ottoman architect and civil engineer who's considered to be one of the greatest architects of the Islamic world. He was born in the town of Agirnes in what is now Turkey, and was a slave in the service of the Ottoman Empire, rising to become the chief architect and head of the imperial works under 3 different sultans. So based on that, I could see why the AI would consider that Mimar Sinan had a part to play in the Dome of the Rock, even though he may not have personally been there. During his long career, Mimar Sinan designed and oversaw the construction of over 300 buildings, including mosques, palaces, bridges, and public baths. His buildings are characterized by their simple, elegant lines, harmonious proportions, and ingenious use of light and space. So he's a bit of a genius, a bit of a Da Vinci, in a sense, of that time. Any thoughts so far?
Yeah, I just want to talk about the word Ma'mar, because I'm not sure if this is his actual name or is this his job. Because today, if we say Ma'mar, it means an engineer who is an architect. This is the meaning of the word. So he is an artist, if this is his actual job title. And if going by today's standards, then this guy oversaw the work of other people and he didn't work with his own hand. He is like a what do you
Chief
call
engineer,
him?
but
A Michelangelo, if you like.
yeah. He had other
So,
people doing the hard graft, but he kind of came up with the vision, came up with the ideas, perhaps, and then said,
yeah,
right, this is what I want, and get at it, and oversaw it, essentially.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So it probably is a title rather than a name. Maybe a kind of a name that he earned through the work he did, maybe.
Like if you say Dr. John, for example, this word doctor, this is not his name.
Yeah,
So this might be this word Ma'mar is not his name. He might
yeah,
be called Sinan.
yeah. Okay. So tell me more about him. One of Mimar Sinan's most famous works is the Süleymaniye Mosque in Istanbul, which was commissioned by Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent and completed in 1557. The mosque is considered to be one of the finest examples of Ottoman architecture and features a large central dome, 4 minarets, and a spacious courtyard surrounded by smaller domes and half domes. So obviously he knows quite a bit about domes, so he would be well placed to oversee work on the Dome of the Rock based on that. He was also a pioneer in the use of earthquake-resistant design, developing innovative techniques for reinforcing buildings and constructing flexible, low-mass domes that could withstand seismic activity. He was known for his mastery of geometry, and his buildings often incorporated complex geometrical patterns and designs. Now, the Dome of the Rock is believed to have been destroyed multiple times because of earthquakes. I can imagine his involvement in that would be really helpful. It also tells us that in addition to his architectural accomplishments, he was also a respected statesman and military engineer and played a key role in the Ottoman Empire's military campaigns in Hungary and Persia. He was a devout Muslim and his work was inspired by a deep faith in God and a commitment to the principles of Islamic art and architecture. So a busy guy. He got involved in a lot of things. There is a word for people like that who kind of just have huge intelligence in usually in many different areas. I'm trying to think what the word is. Can you think of the word?
Savant, or this is a
Something,
bad word?
something on that lines. I think there was another word, but savant maybe is probably a good way of explaining it. But we'll look at him in just a second again. So, is there any of Mimar Sinan's work that is similar to the inscriptions in the Dome of the Rock?
But before you go to this slide, could you just get the previous one? This last word, it says deep commitment to God, to the principles of Islamic art and architecture. I assume the word Islamic art means having any art that does not have something with a soul in it. So you cannot draw a human or an animal. And this is in the Sunnah today. That's why if someone is a Salafist or is a very devout Muslim, he never has any picture in his house which has something with a soul, like an animal or a human being. So this concept in itself is rather late. If you remember that you yourself made a very good video about the Umayyads and how they had pictures with women with big breasts and stuff.
Yeah.
So this maybe strengthens the idea that the whole art of the Dome of the Rock is rather late.
Yeah, that they got to a point where now they're trying to keep things pure. So nothing of the human soul is in it. No depictions of people. Yeah, that could well be the case.
That is probably post Spain, post the Andalus. That's the idea.
Yeah. Okay, so just going from there then, is there any of his work that's similar to the inscriptions in the Dome of the Rock? So here's what it came up with. It said he's primarily known for his works in the Ottoman Empire, while the Dome of the Rock is located in Jerusalem and dates back to the 7th century. Now, it's just literally given us the standard take here. Therefore, he did not directly work on the Dome of the Rock. However, he did incorporate elements of Islamic architecture and design in his works, which were inspired by the works of earlier Islamic architects. Some of his notable works include the Celebi Mosque, if I can pronounce that correctly, in Edirne, Turkey, and the Süleymani Mosque in Istanbul, both of which feature intricate calligraphy and geometrical designs similar to those found in the Dome of the Rock. So there are similarities there between his work and that on the Dome of the Rock. Now, this is just an example of something that A.J. Deus discovered about his work. Mimar Sinan's name is associated with multiple 16th century Turkish mosques, and the paper that A.J. Deus wrote was called Raw Analysis Turkish Mosque Orientations, Monuments of Jihad, and he speaks about a 1566 mosque called the Banya Bashi Mosque. And where does it point to? Well, as you can see there, that small yellow circle there, just at the foot of Italy, it points directly at that place. And it actually is pointing to Malta, a particular location in Malta, where the Ottomans at that time were actually having a siege trying to conquer Malta, right? That gives you a fair idea of how accurate their ability to do the qiblas at that time were. A.J. Deus says that it is likely to Cospicua, Malta, the Great Siege of Malta, 1565. Now, when A.J. Deus told me about this a few days ago, I was a little bit shocked in more ways than one, because when he told me about this, I had literally just come back from Malta, and guess where I was actually located during my holidays? Literally where that yellow circle is on the map of Malta. Literally, my apartment was right within that circle, so that was really spooky, to say the least. Now, it made a lot of sense that the siege was there because the whole island is very well fortressed. So I think this is quite significant because you can see this guy's ability in terms of architecture. He's interested in the symbolism of the geometrical shapes. He's interested in the significance of the qibla. And for him, the qibla had a jihadi connotation. It's got nothing to do with Mecca. It's basically you point your qibla towards where you are intending to conquer. So it was kind of like you're lining up your army in the direction of where you want to conquer. Have you ever heard that kind of concept before?
Only from AJ Deus. I remember reading something like this before, and I really liked it. It seems very convincing.
Yeah, I think it's very convincing, and you know, in terms of thinking about the directions of all of these strange qiblas that are all over the shop, if the qiblas were actually to do with where they were planning to conquer next, it makes perfect sense of the qiblas that are in Northern Africa, which point southwards. Well, if they had conquered in the northern part, you can totally understand them having qiblas pointing southwards, because that would be where they'd be next trying to conquer, you know, the lands beneath. So it's just another alternative theory. I think it has a lot to going for it. Now, the next little bit is from a paper called The Dome of the Rock as pamphlet set. He talks about the actual particular person who was involved with the Dome of the Rock at the time. Documents in the Jerusalem Sigil records have shown that the construction overseer of the waterworks and the city walls was the royal tax collector, the painter-decorator called Muhammad Celebi al-Naqqash. He is referred to in an Ottoman Turkish document as the construction overseer, known as Nakas Mahmad. I don't know if I'm pronouncing those names correct.
Yeah, can I tell you here the word al-Naqqash? It means the one who inscribes. And here,
no way.
Yeah, and here when it says known as Naqqash Mehmet, maybe this is a Turkish way of saying the inscriber Muhammad.
My goodness, I didn't know that.
Yes, Naqsh is an inscription.
Yeah.
So Naqqash is the one who inscribes.
Wow, that's like a bonus that I didn't expect. Because the idea here is that he was the person who made the inscriptions. The fact he has that name is just a bonus. I wasn't expecting it. That's amazing. Okay, so he was responsible for the building project of the Sultan's water channel and for establishing its Waqf. How do you pronounce that? Waqfas?
Waqf is, you know, in Arabic, it's something that you build for. It's like sabil. It's like something that you build for poor people to get water and stuff. This is how we understand it today, but this is not necessarily correct at that time, just to make sure.
Yeah. We learn from the sigils of Jerusalem that between 1537 and 1541, he directed some of the funds reserved for the city walls to ongoing renovations at the Haram. 300 gold coins for the gilding of the Dome of the Rock, and 100 gold coins for the Aqsa Mosque. The dome may have been restored prior to the creation of its gilded finial, an illustrated Persian guidebook for pilgrims written in 1560 to 61, mentions an order by Suleiman to renovate the dome surrounded by windows over the rock when the city walls were being constructed. It was also around that time that the governor of Jerusalem and Gaza, Mahmed Beg, used his own funds to refurbish the blessed red mihrab, bearing an inscription dated 1538 to 1539. So there's a lot of inscriptions going on at the time by the looks of it. And now located on the floor of the Prophet's Dome, which seems to have been built over it later. Okay, a little bit more on that before I move on and back to the AI. During a formal Sharia court session held in 1541 to 42 at the Dome of the Chain, Muhammad al-Naqqash testified that he had endowed the completed aqueduct and 9 sabils in the Sultan's name. In 1543 to 44, 2 years before the Dome of the Rock's drum was refaced with external tile revetments, he is mentioned in a document as the construction overseer of the Haram of the Exalted Rock, that is, of the raised platform. This otherwise unknown painter-decorator, who died in 1549, must therefore have played a prominent role in the design process not only of Jerusalem's city walls and fountains, but also of the Dome of the Rock's tile revetment program. After the tiling of the drum, that of the octagon was completed in 1551 to 52. The date provided on the Sultan's tilework foundation inscription at the building's north gate, to which we shall return. I found a confirmation of that date in the unpublished chronicle of Mustafa Ali, which lists the renovation of the Dome of the Rock among Sultan Suleiman's major building projects. The passage suggests that the project involved more than external tile revetments and perhaps included the renewal of marble revetments as well. And, I'll just go from there. So this guy is definitely a person of interest in terms of the inscriptions. He did a lot of work on the interior and exterior using a lot of tiles. Could he be involved in putting those inscriptions in place? That's the big question. So just going a bit further, do you want to say anything on that before I move on, actually?
No, we're good to go now.
Yeah. So I followed it up with the AI even, with this question. Which Arabic Quran are the inscriptions in the Dome of the Rock most similar to? So I didn't know what it would come up with. So it said, first of all, the inscriptions in the Dome of the Rock are similar to the Kufic script found in early Arabic Qurans. Okay, so the script is similar to that, obviously. However, it is worth noting that the script used in the Dome of the Rock is slightly different from the standard Kufic script that is commonly found in early Quranic manuscripts. Now, there is a scholar by the name of Christelle, whose surname escapes me. She's done a study of the inscriptions, and there were certain grammatical features of the Kufic that don't appear to her to be 7th century, but they look like 9th century. I think it was to do with the dotting on the kaf letter. And now she didn't make a big deal about it, but it's possible that if they were trying to replicate a Kufic script from the 7th century, they probably might have found it difficult to get an example from the 7th century and use whatever examples that they had at hand, which could have been from the 9th century. The other thing that she noticed was there was a massive inconsistency between the inner and outer inscriptions in terms of the application of diacritical marks. Now, it's no surprise to know that there wasn't any hard and fast rules in relation to diacritical marks. Basically, people would have put them wherever they felt they were needed. But even still, there's a decided absence with one set of the inscriptions. Now, I don't remember offhand whether it was the outer or inner, but I've done a video on this a number of months ago. But that could indicate that the person who was doing the inscriptions either had done it at different periods of time, or it could be that they weren't all that familiar with the script and were just hoping for the best. Any thoughts on that before I go on?
Well, I think the logical way of seeing this is to try to compare it with the coins, because the coins will be the only things that do not deteriorate from that time. Yeah. And so the script on the coins seems like a more sound Kufic script but the ones on the Dome of the Rock seem like maybe they were originally Kufic, then got corrupted a little bit. It's kind of hard to say exactly,
Yeah.
but they are not as clean and slick as the ones on the coins, especially the ones which come from Persia.
Yeah.
So
Could it be possible that could someone who's not familiar with Arabic being able to replicate the style of a Kufic script if they just viewed it as a piece of artwork that they could, prepare and just kind of just viewed as a kind of a design that they're putting in place? Do you think is that possible?
no, I just think it's more simple than that.
Yeah.
It's just that they wanted to make an inscription, but it was too hard to do it. So it was someone who does know Arabic, but it's hard to do it from an artistic standpoint only, not because he had a problem knowing the language. So maybe it's just this way.
Yeah.
Like if you want to draw someone, but still your drawing will never be perfect. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you are not seeing this someone or that you have a problem knowing him. It's just that's hard artistically. So maybe it is this way.
Okay. Yeah. So I followed up with another question. How is it different? So the first question is, um, which Arabic Quran are the inscriptions of the Dome of the Rock most similar to? And so the follow-up question, well, how is it different? So it says the inscriptions in the Dome of the Rock are different from the standard Quranic text in several ways. For example, some verses are shortened or abbreviated, and there are also variations in spelling and pronunciation. Now, just on that one, do you think it's feasible that if they had a regular verse in the Quran as the guideline, that they would take it upon themselves to shorten it? What's your take? Does that sound like it's something that you wouldn't do because it's like a sacred text? You shouldn't be doing that sort of thing. Any thoughts
Yeah,
on that?
and I think it's not really possible. Maybe the inscriptions are just the original form, and then the written Qurans are the wrong forms. So
Could be,
maybe
yeah,
maybe the inscriptions are the ones who are not tampered with at that time.
yeah,
Even at a later time, they are still more original.
yeah. Yeah, I think there's obviously one or two things going on. I think one of the possible explanations is that the inscriptions come before the standard Quranic verses are in place. The other option would be that the inscriptions are done at a later time, but they're not using the Hafs Arabic Quran. They're using an Ottoman Quran, which has got different Quranic verses.
Remember the work of Yehuda Nevo?
Yeah,
Uh, he showed that a verse which was written in the Dome of the Rock was more sound and more understandable than the one that we have in the current Quran. So this means that the ones in the Dome of the Rock, even if it's in the 16th century, is more original than the Hafs that we have now. As you know, of course, the Hafs and all these readings and standardizations, they come from the 1920s, so they are wrong. So
yeah, they're actually really are later when you think of it, the Hafs,
yeah,
because of that very
exactly.
point. And the other thing is the choice of the Hafs was why it became popular even before the 1920s was because it was easier to print a Hafs one because of the particular orthography in the Hafs Qurans. So for the printer, it was easier. So they had all of these different Qurans, and they went for the Hafs one because it was simply easier to print than other ones. They didn't think about which of them is, that it's similar to what it should, to the original. It was down to just simple printer considerations. So that might have changed things. So the second thing it says, so it talks about shortening and abbreviations, but it says, additionally, some of the inscriptions include verses that are not found in the standard Quranic text. Okay, so that's a problem. This is likely because the inscriptions were written in the Kufic script, which was still developing during the time when the Dome of the Rock was built, and because they were written by different scribes who may have had their own variations, interpretations of the text, possibly. Or it could be that they're using a different Quran with different verses that we are not familiar with today because we are using a Hafs Quran by and large. But we haven't really even started investigating what is out there in terms of all the different manuscripts to see maybe these verses are there in other Qurans. Okay, so how was the script different to that found in the early manuscripts? So that was my next question. So the script found in the early manuscripts of the Quran is known as the Hijazi script, which is characterized by angular and bold strokes. The script used in the inscriptions of the Dome of the Rock is a more developed form of the Kufic script, which is known for its square, angular shapes and distinctive horizontal lines. The Kufic script used in the Dome of the Rock inscriptions is also more ornate and decorative than the earlier Hijazi script. The letters are elongated, and there is an increased use of decorative elements such as dots and diacritical marks. Additionally, the inscriptions in the Dome of the Rock include many instances of stretched and elongated letters, which are not common in the early manuscripts. Now, my understanding is the Hijazi script came before the Kufic script. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Now, what we're seeing a lot of, and Jay Smith is looking into this at the minute, is the evidence seems to be that the Quranic manuscripts that we have are not from the 7th century. Would that be fair to say? There's certainly an argument around that, but Stephen Shoemaker is arguing very strongly that we're not seeing manuscripts from the 7th century. We're looking at early to mid 8th century manuscripts. Now, if the Hijazi script is earlier, then surely that is what we should be seeing in the Dome of the Rock, Hijazi script, not Kufic script. So I don't understand why they've gone for Kufic script for the 7th century, to be honest. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I think this is political. But first, I want to tell you about the Hijazi script, that this name itself, Hijazi, could lead people to wrong conclusions. But
Yes.
This is because there was a Western guy who just named it this way because he had no other name to name it right that time. But this doesn't mean it comes from the Hijaz. It's just the older, we just call it Hijazi. You can call it classical or anything else. And this style, you will not find it in the Quran, the earliest ones. That's why I agree with Shoemaker about his dates. And that's why, if you remember, we made an episode way back, and I told you that Abd Al Malik is the one who gathered the Quran, and Al-Hajjaj is the one who helped standardize and also make it being read aloud in the mosques. These are all Al-Hajjaj inventions. Now,
Do you know,
yeah?
I was just going to say, Stephen Shoemaker must have been watching your video, because every word of what you had said back then, I remember it well. He pretty much agrees in his book. He's saying the very same thing. He really is pushing Hajjaj and Abd Al Malik.
Yeah, this is something that I'm very proud of. And you see, Al-Hajjaj, remember that the Abbasid narrative is the one which prevailed. But still, you have within it how big Al-Hajjaj and Abd al-Malik were. Why? Because you cannot delete their legacy that much. That's the idea, because they had this legacy. They are the ones who made the Quran popular, standardized, and used in the mosques.
Yeah, that's a very strong point.
Yeah, but I want to come back to the inscriptions of the dome now. They are Kufic, and remember that within the Islamic narrative that if al-Ma'mun, he went and changed and he tampered with the inscriptions. If he tampered with them, put the script in there, and maybe later, when they renovated with this new research that you are getting, they are still renovating upon Kufic Abbasid script, which goes well, of course, with the Abbasid coins also.
Yeah. Well, AJ Juice basically says that the al-Mamun correction is a bit of a fraud in itself. So he reckons that was probably done, I think it was the 19th century. He dates that to. It could be something as simple as they realized that the proposal that Abd Al Malik created the Dome of the Rock so early might have been an obvious error, and they had to cover their tracks by putting Al Mamun in as an alternative, so that they were covered both sides of the argument, as it were. So I don't know. I think it could be something like that, but it's also very convenient if there was any suspicions that the inscriptions weren't from the 7th century, by putting that addition to the inscription. It makes it look authentic. Said, well, how could it be done in the 16th century if you have the al-Mamun correction? Surely that proves it. But for people who are trying to defraud, these are the sort of details that you focus in on. Now, they say the devil's in the detail, but fraud or people who defraud often are sticklers for detail to convince people. So I think it could be still a 19th century addition to the inscription, as AJ Juice would have proposed. So here's the next little bit. Are there any examples of the same verses shortened in a similar way in an Arabic Quran from Ottoman times? Now, this bit was quite mind-boggling for me, and I think this will require further investigation to see if the AI is correct. So it says the following. It says, yes, there are examples of the same verses being shortened in a similar way in Arabic Qurans from Ottoman times. So if you remember earlier on, we said that what's peculiar about the inscriptions on the Dome of the Rock is that Quranic verses are abbreviated and truncated. And where the AI found similar examples of this happening were in Ottoman Qurans. Okay, so it says the Ottoman Turkish script used for writing Arabic during that period was known as the Ottoman Naskh script, which is based on the earlier Naskh script used in the Abbasid period. The Ottoman Naskh script is known for its use of diacritical marks to differentiate between letters and its shortening of certain words and verses. One example of this in the 15th century Ottoman Quran manuscript known as Topkapi manuscript. I don't know if they're correct with this particular manuscript. This will need to be confirmed. But it says in this manuscript, the verse of Surah Al-An'am 6101 is abbreviated to read, and God is greater and more lasting, whereas in earlier manuscripts, the full verse reads, and God is greater than what they associate with him. This same verse is also shortened in the Dome of the Rock inscriptions, where it reads, God is greater. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's kind of strange that till this time they are still tampering with the text. It's not strange when you look at it in the Sana'a manuscript. And also, I want to tell you something considering the word naskh, the Ottomanic naskh script. Do you see this word naskh?
Yeah.
It means transcribe. This is the same word which they use in the Quran today to say abrogate.
Oh, you're serious?
Yes, so you can see here the root of this word. this is just a side note as to why the word nasakh never means abrogate. And today, the type of text that I can write these days is nasakh. I cannot write Hijazi or Kufic. These are very old scripts that I cannot even read. Very hard for me.
Yeah.
So that means that till now we are living in an Arabic Ottomanic script.
Okay. Yeah, that just shows the level of impact the Ottomans had on what we have today.
And remember that the Ottomans, they are the ones who finalized Sahih al-Bukhari in all its volumes, and
Yeah.
they finalized all these hadith and sunnah. So definitely the final Islamic product is Ottoman, no doubt. We are just looking at the details.
Is it a coincidence that they finalize al-Bukhari, who famously explains that it was Uthman who first collected the Quran? And Uthman, it sounds to me very much like Ottoman to me. Is that just a coincidence?
No, it's the same word. This is just the Romanized way. This is just how you say it in English.
Yeah.
But in Arabic, we say al-Uthmaniyin from Uthman. It's the same word. So you
Yeah.
can just say the Ottomans. It's the same word.
So is it possible that the Ottomans were choosing a narrative in terms of how the Quran was put together that suited their own sort of perspective on history, which is, the Ottomans are amazing. So how do you express that in the collection of the Quran by choosing a person called Uthman? Whether this person is real or not, it's
highly
doubts.
possible. It's highly possible, and also something else is that you need to get the narrative as close to the Prophet as possible. So you cannot throw it upon Abd Al Malik. You have to choose a companion at least, so that is close. So you will choose one called Uthman, just like your dynasty.
Yeah. Stephen Shoemaker goes into this very well in his book, and he basically says, the all of these conflicting stories of when the Quran was collected are just bogus. The real event was Abd Al Malik. It was him and Al-Hajjaz that really collected it, because these other stories are just variations on that. And probably, I think he also mentioned that the reason why they might have pushed it back to Uthman and Abu Bakr was precisely that, to kind of connect it as early as possible with Muhammad and his companions. But in terms of the quote there, Surah 6:101, is the Arabic correct that's there?
You mean the English translation?
Yeah, well, just that, that it lines up, that, and God is greater, more lasting. The Arabic that's given there for that, and for the next part, does that look correct to you?
It will be the first one, and God is like more aggrandized or larger and more lasting.
Yeah.
The other one would be and Allah is bigger concerning what they associate with him.
Okay, so it is, spot on. Yeah, just it's good to know that.
Yeah, so, it's good. No problem.
Yeah. So I suppose the key question mark is really, which manuscript is this pointing to? Which Topkapi? Topkapi obviously is a palace in Istanbul. There are a lot of manuscripts that are referred to as Topkapi, so it would be great to actually get hold of the actual manuscript and see for ourselves that there is a truncation in the Quran similar to what you find in the inscription. And if it lines up, it's definitely strong evidence that the inscriber, what do we call him earlier on? Naqqash?
Naqqash.
Yeah. So if he was sent from the Ottomans to do that work, they probably said, "Here, take this Quran with you, and create an inscription. Use this." They wouldn't have been saying, here's a 7th century manuscript. They would have said, here's a contemporary one. Use that, but just make sure you do it in Kufic to make it look authentic. So that's how I see if the evidence backs it up, obviously. So this is hypothetical here. And then it goes a little bit further. Any other examples? Another example is the verse of Surah Al-Fat 48:1, which is abbreviated in the Tope copy manuscript to read, "Verily we have given thee a manifest victory," whereas in earlier manuscripts the full verse reads, "Verily we have given thee a manifest victory, that God may forgive thee thy faults of the past and those to come, fulfill his favor to thee, and guide thee on the straight way." So we have, at least in this manuscript that's been referenced, we do definitely see abbreviations. At the question mark really is, what is this manuscript specifically? Is it definitely a 15th century manuscript? And if it is, then I think we might be onto something. Now, it also gives us the Arabic there, and then it follows up by saying, in the Dome of the Rock inscriptions, this same verse is also shortened to read, "Verily we have given thee a manifest victory." Now, when I went on the Islamic Awareness website, this translated verse didn't appear. I don't know where the AI got this info from. It may be mistaken. So this phrase, "Verily we have given thee a manifest victory," I couldn't find it in the Dome of the Rock inscriptions. It's not to say it's not there, but at least the Islamic Awareness website does not have that translation. Any thoughts? Is it possible that they could have hidden that bit? Or is it a mistake?
Well, I don't know about this one in particular. I have no idea, so I don't have an opinion. But concerning the Islamic Awareness website, I have looked at it multiple times for other things. And definitely these people, they're not doing a good job, and they are hiding and obscuring stuff. And they are relying upon the fact that they have some stuff that only they have. So they have the right to obscure. And the people working on it. The people. So you cannot trust these people like Mansour and stuff.
Yeah.
So yes, they only show the things that maybe go with the Islamic narrative. And actually, if you look even at the stuff they put, and you just take it out and look at it from a critical eye, it goes against the Islamic narrative.
Yeah, it's true. I think they probably don't appreciate how damaging some of the material is. I think they probably are doing a game of numbers. They realize that maybe 95% of the Muslim public don't really care that much. It's of academic concern. So if a few people get turned away from Islam because of it, they probably say, well, it's only a few, because most people are not interested enough to look into it. I think Cambridge University is connected with them, in terms of maybe the funding. Is that right? Have you heard anything like that?
I did not hear about it, but I wouldn't say it's wrong, because that's what I call in like the left and the Islamic alliance is real. So maybe this all comes in together. Actually, whenever you try to save a picture from the Islamic Awareness website, it will tell you, please don't copy, and you cannot copy the picture. So I have to just screenshot it to add them in my videos to critique them. So
Yeah.
they also don't want you to critique
Yeah, no.
the work. So
It's not
just
not
come to
very
our
academic, is
website.
it?
Just come to our website. Just take this propaganda, swallow it, and shut up.
That's it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially when it comes to Christianity, how they try to reply or go against Christianity, you can see how bad they are and how terrible of a job they are doing. And also when they try to defend the Quran, with Joseph having coins at his time, and these mistakes they try to reconcile it, but they do a bad job. So yeah, we should make a video just about this website. Maybe.
We should. I think while it still has got many of these problems there on the website, so I'm sure you're probably taking plenty of screenshots for evidence, because they are great at covering up these things in due course. But,
yes, I am, for sure.
Excellent. Okay. So this is what the Islamic Awareness website has. This is a straightforward transcription. The scholar Christelle, I think her surname now, it come to think, is I think it's something like Graber, something like that. So she's done the inscriptions. So they've basically taken a copy of it and then offered their own translation, which has its issues, let's say. So this is the translation that it gives for one side. Let me see which it is. This is the inner octagonal. So what I did was I get the following instructions. So this looks quite a lot there, but what I've said is to the AI, I said, take the following from the Dome of the Rock inscriptions and analyze them as to which are Quranic verses. Label them if they are truncated versions of the Hafs Quran used today. Okay, so I've asked it to spot the Quranic verses in the text and if it's truncated in any way. Okay, hope that makes sense. So the results, it says the following are Quranic verses found in the Dome of the Rock inscription. So that's fine, no hassle there. The following are not Quranic verses, but rather paraphrased statements and teachings found in the Quran. Now, I don't know how much of this might be that the translation is poor and it makes it look like it's not from the Quran. I'm not sure. So we have all of these quotes there that you can take a look. Any thoughts on this so far? It doesn't surprise you that the Dome of the Rock may have paraphrased Quranic verses, or even verses that are not from the Quran.
Nothing so far, but remember that I don't know the Quran by heart, of course.
Yeah. It looks fairly authentic, but obviously you'd literally, to really spot it, you'd have to go line by line, compare it. And the problem is that when you're trying to compare things through translation, it's not great. The only people that can really see if it's authentic and correct is someone who speaks Arabic, and it's a tedious job. But I think this would be a really great service for people to do. Anyone who has got time in their hands is literally to take the inscription. It'll probably need to be converted into a modern Arabic script first, so that you could really see the difference, and then just go and look it up and see where the truncations are.
The very first thing that I've just noticed now, it says, "Lo, God and his angels shower blessings on the Prophet." I am sure that this is the one which is God and his angels pray over the Prophet. So even here they have it as shower blessings, but it's pray over the Prophet.
Yeah, they have covered that bit up. So this is what you're dealing with, it's hiding the truth. Okay, so there was a little bit more there. Again, you can just see this is a paraphrased teaching from the Quran. This is a paraphrased teaching, so on. Okay, so it doesn't look like a Hafs Quran that is being used here, or something equivalent to it. So what it did then was do the same for this. So this is the other side of the Dome of the Rock inscription. I think this would be the inside one, I think. But the opposite of the last one, I can't remember which it was. So the following are the Quranic verses in the inscriptions and their labels based on the Hafs Quran. Okay, so this first one, this is the first sentence of the Declaration of Faith in Islam, known as the Shahada. It is a complete verse from the Quran, Quran 112, and is labeled as such in the Hafs Quran. Okay, so That's good. Second one says, this is not a complete verse from the Quran, but is a commonly recited phrase in Muslim prayers. Okay. And then the third one, this is a reference to Quran 33:56, where Allah and his angels send blessings upon Prophet Muhammad. The rest of the sentence is not a complete verse in the Quran, but is a common Islamic practice to send blessings upon the Prophet. So there does appear to be truncations and paraphrasing going on here in the inscription on the Dome of the Rock. Any thoughts?
It is possible, but since I cannot see the Arabic in the modern way, so it's very, very hard to say.
Yeah, I think what we will definitely need to do, and this will probably require some linguists to get involved in this, is take the Kufic script, convert it into modern Arabic, and then make the comparisons. I think that would be the next step, really. That would be good.
Yeah, if someone converted the Kufic into the modern Arabic, then I come and translate both, then it will be very easy to see the differences.
Yeah. Okay, so this number 4, this is a reference to Surah 4:171. The rest of the sentence is not a complete verse from the Quran, but is a common Islamic practice. And the next one, something similar. The first sentence is not a complete verse from the Quran, but is a common Islamic practice. And the rest of the sentence is a reference to Surah 19:35-36, where Allah emphasizes his power and refuses the notion that he has a son. Okay, so if anyone thought that these were just verses straight from the Quran, it's pretty obvious that there's a difference there. Now, just to follow up on the AI, I looked at a paper by Oleg Graeber, his analysis of the Dome of the Rock inscriptions. It doesn't line up with the Islamic awareness text. So he talks about the inscription in the interior. Now, when I looked at it, the inscriptions didn't seem to line up with the inscriptions on the what I thought would have been the inner octagonal, but he starts with the outer octagonal, and that's, okay. So just to get that out of the way. So what did he spot in the text? Okay, so this is a bit maybe hard to follow, but he basically identifies different Quranic verses. So you can see here, he has this part here underlined, say he is God the One, God the Eternal, besought by all, and so forth. Lo God and his angels shower blessings on the Prophet. Ye who believe ask blessings on him and salute him, and so forth. Okay, so he gives the Quranic verses there mentioned. Now, this bit here is interesting. It says, the fourth quotation, 64:1 and 57:2, is a simple statement of the absolute power of God. All in heaven and on the earth glorify God, and to him is the kingdom, to him is praise. He has power over all things. Now, this scholar is saying that these messages are in the inscriptions on the Dome of the Rock, and guess what? The Islamic awareness does not have any reference to this in their translation. Does that surprise you?
No.
So I looked at both the inner and outer, and so, why did they leave this out? Like, why hide this? Like, so I doubt he made a mistake. So he's got access to the transcriptions, and they would have the best people on the job to kind of interpret the Kufic script, convert it into modern Arabic, and so forth. And he's basically saying that this quotation there in the red box is amongst the inscriptions, and yet it's hidden. It's not even mentioned in the Islamic awareness. Why? Have they got something to hide? Obviously, that's got me interested. I thought if someone is hiding something, I want to know why, and what is it about this that's maybe damaging. So I did a bit of investigating, And this was a whole can of worms, so I'm going to share what I've got. Now, the first thing is, if you look at the quotation there, does that remind you of anything? Right? Does that remind you of any gospel verse by any chance? I'm not.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
may not.
When I heard the kingdom of God and stuff, I felt it's more Christian.
Yeah. So actually, when I saw it, I think I might have it on. It might. Let me see here. Why does the quotation that not appear? So I said, is Ola Grebber, has he made a mistake? It's unlikely. Has Islamic awareness made a mistake or covered this up for some reason? Okay. Now, so here are the verses, okay? And here they are again. And I've highlighted the key words, glory, power, and kingdom. And I thought, that sounds very familiar to the kingdom, the power, and the glory. It's found in the Gospels straight after the Our Father. But the funny thing is, it's not found in the early versions of the Gospels, the early Bibles or early manuscripts. It's actually found where it became popularized is, as we'll see, is actually with the Protestants. But before we come to that, I'll explain.
Can you just? Oh, okay. This is the verse. This is the verse.
Yeah, I'm going to show you the gospel passage where this is like so. So these are just two quotations from the Quran which are on the Dome of the Rock inscription.
No, but I wanna just tell you something about the first verse.
Yeah.
It's translated as whatever is in the heavens and the earth, both declare the praises and glory to Allah. But in the Arabic, it actually says whatever is in the heavens and the earth, both declare for him the kingdom and for him the praise. Kingdom. It's not there in the English.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Al-Mulk is the kingdom. Al-Hamd is the praises. So they omitted kingdom here in the first one.
I'm going to explain in a second, but I think where this comes from is actually from Matthew's Gospel. It's a doxology that's found in Eastern Greek Gospels of Matthew's Gospel, the kind that would be found in Byzantine areas, but not found in the Latin West. And the reason being is that it was a doxology that was used in liturgies that eventually started to be included in their Bibles, because when people said the Our Father, they added this doxology, this very short phrase, and so they eventually incorporated it then, but it wasn't actually there in the early manuscripts. So it's interesting. Let's go into it a bit further. The other version of this doxology is in Jude, verse 25. To the only wise God, our Savior, be glory, majesty, and dominion and power, both now and forever. So it's a similar idea. It's very similar to the Quranic verse.
Oh yes, here he has it as dominion, but I made a mistake. He has it as dominion here, this translator. But the word mulk, it means, you want the very literal meaning, it means ownership. Kingdom or ownership.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I noticed something else about these verses. It reminds me of the King James Bible, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. That's the end of the Our Father. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. It reminded me immediately of that. Now, this is highly speculative, but to me, it looks like the Dome of the Rock inscription was influenced by this passage found in Matthew's Gospel, except there is a problem with that. Let's remind ourselves, when A.J. Deus considers the inscriptions have been completed between 1523 and 1543. Okay, so that's the dating, the timing of the inscriptions. Was there anything happening to do with the Christian Bible in that time frame in the 16th century? Was there a re-evaluation of this doxology and the inclusion of this in the Gospels? Well, yes, there was. This particular verse started to be used in Bibles all over Europe in the 16th century. Seems like too much of a coincidence to me. Okay, so what am I talking about here? Matthew 6:13 at that time was being reconsidered. Okay, so in Geneva, Switzerland, the first generation of Protestant reformers had produced the Geneva Bible of 1560 from the original Hebrew and Greek scriptures, which was influential in the writing of the authorized King James Version. In January 1604, King James convened the Hampton Court Conference, where a New English version was conceived in response to the problems of earlier translations perceived by the Puritans. Okay. Now, this is something else I found. The reason for the presence or absence of the brief doxology at the end of the Lord's Prayer is actually liturgical use. In Eastern Rite usage, the doxology is recited in the liturgy after the Lord's Prayer. This is probably how the phrase crept into Eastern Greek medieval manuscripts of the New Testament. These manuscripts are ultimately the ones on which the King James version was based. The King James served as the Bible for English liturgy for a long time, thus becoming traditional for Protestants. On the other hand, the doxology never made its way into the text of the Latin Bible, which was the basis of Western Rite Roman Catholic liturgy, so is not understood as part of the Lord's Prayer proper in the Catholic Church. Newer Protestant translations make use of a scholarly critical text of the New Testament. Biblical scholars stand in general consensus that the original Gospel of Matthew did not have the doxology. They believe this because the earlier Greek manuscripts don't have the phrase, and neither do early translations of the text, while there is a clear motivation for adding it in later Greek manuscripts. So the phrase is absent from the text of most modern translations, though it might be noted in a footnote. Now, what's interesting is when the Turks took over what became, Turkey today, you had Greek Christians who eventually over the centuries converted to Islam, but they brought their own perspectives into Islam, including various beliefs, these doxologies and so forth. And it just seems quite remarkable that you have this particular doxology on the Dome of the Rock inscription at the precise time that when the Bible was being translated into the vernacular, they started looking at Greek Bibles, Greek New Testaments, which had this doxology and not the earlier manuscripts that was used up to that point. Okay. So considering that this doxology was strongly embedded in Eastern Christianity, it is not such a surprise to find a similar doxology show up in the Dome of the Rock inscription. It could be just a coincidence, but it just seems remarkable. It seems like if the inscription was done in the 16th century, it makes perfect sense. If it was done in the 7th century, it's kind of hard to imagine that doxology showing up there, because it took centuries before that doxology became embedded into the Christian Bible. Okay. Now, however, if the inscription was done in the 16th century, then this may be a hint of the contemporary situation, the zeitgeist of the time. Now, I don't want to make too much of the word zeitgeist, because I know that's a whole other kettle of fish. But the idea here, I'm using it in a very loose sense, that there was something in the air at the time. There was like debates and going on, particularly around the Bible, and I think this might have had an influence on the Dome of the Rock inscription. Now, was there any links between Protestants and Ottomans at that time? Well, Protestantism and Islam entered into contact during the early 16th century, when the Ottoman Empire, expanding in the Balkans, first encountered Calvinist Protestants in present-day Hungary and Transylvania. As both parties opposed the Austrian Holy Roman Emperor and his Roman Catholic allies, numerous exchanges occurred exploring religious similarities and the possibility of trade and military alliances. The early Protestants and Islam established a sense of mutual tolerance and understanding despite some theological differences and Christology, considering each other to be closer to one another than to Catholicism. The Ottoman Empire supported the early Protestant churches and contributed to their survival in dire times. Martin Luther regarded the Ottomans as allies against the papacy, considered them the rod of God's wrath against Europe's sins. So what I'm suggesting there is there seems to be some connection here between this particular doxology and the fact that this was included in Protestant Bibles at that very same time. Any thoughts on that, or does this sound far-fetched?
I don't know how to say it. Like, even if it's far-fetched, it's like a prophecy that fulfilled itself, because I know that Protestants got along with Islam. Even today, it happens, because as long as you are against the papacy and against orthodoxy, then you are good. A Protestant, in the eyes of a Muslim, even today, the Muslim sees him as an atheist. This is how the Muslims see a Protestant today. He says, you don't have a priest. Even if you have a priest, he wears jeans. This is not a Christian. You are just an atheist. Come here, maybe I can brainwash you. But at least you are better than the Orthodox and the Catholic. So, to be honest, I think the idea is far-fetched, but it just happens to to go well, you know.
Yeah. Now, this is an area that myself and Lloyd has been discussing, this 16th century time period. It's something that this is really the start of looking into it a bit more deeply. I think there's something more to it than appears. AJ Juice is sort of onto this a little bit as well. And this could be just a little red flag. I don't want to make too big an issue of it, but it could be a sign that there's a little bit of influence here. So to kind of summarize, if the inscriptions were made by what's his name again,
al-Naqqash.
al-Naqqash, sorry, and he's an Ottoman. He's imbibed this particular culture, which, you know, Christianity is still relatively recent in Turkey. It hasn't completely gone away. There's a lot of cross-pollination in society, and the doxology would have been in the Eastern Greek Bibles at that time. I think it makes sense that this doxology could have been appropriate to include in the scripture, but it might, as I say, it might be just a coincidence. Now we have the following verses here as well. Okay, so just moving on. He spots that these are verses from the Quran that are in the inscriptions. And he notices that there's truncations. So you can see in this one here, unto him belongeth sovereignty and unto him belongeth praise. In this one, he also notes that there's a truncation. So in the inscription, it says he quicketh and gives death. But as you can see in the box below, there's a lot more to the verse originally. So these ones here would be worth investigating with a look at Ottoman Qurans to see if there's a similar truncation going on there.
And let me tell you something just crossed my mind, is that today if you make a call to God, then you say Quranic verses, but not because they are Quranic verses, that this is the way you express yourself. So maybe everything that's in the Dome of the Rock are actually never were Quranic verses, but they were invocations or prayers that are based on Quranic verses. Because most of these, most of these verses are like, all praise be to God. Well, God will not say that. This is something that you say. This is something that you call onto a deity. Yeah. So maybe this is a possibility also. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, there's also this one here. Whether ye reveal anything or conceal it, verily Allah has full knowledge of all things. Now, so Grabber, Oleg Grabber says that this appears in the inscription, and lo and behold, there's no reference to it either in the Islamic Awareness website. So that's two examples of the Islamic Awareness just not referencing the particular translation. So why is that missing? So that's two. Now we also have this one here. So he mentions the passage on the right there in the red box, and it does appear in the Dome of the Rock inscription translation on the Islamic Awareness website there. And we also have this here. These don't line up very well. Why? Does the inscription instruct the faithful to pray, or does it express the prayer? So, here we have pray for your prophet and your servant Jesus, son of Mary. The Islamic Awareness translation is, "O God, bless your messenger and your servant Jesus, son of Mary, peace be upon him." So you can see there's a difference. Is the Islamic Awareness massaging the translation for theological reasons? It doesn't line up. So this, I think, is probably a more accurate translation of the text there. Okay. Don't know if you want to say anything on that, or
remember Islamic Awareness website, the mission statement that you just see whenever you open the main page. It will tell you something like, we have created this website to go against evangelists and people who want to convert people to Christianity. So this whole website is built to battle people like Jay Smith and people on the same line. So they are not here to investigate deeply to know the truth. They are here to try the most and only the sufficient amount just to battle the evangelist. So these are not good researchers. These are not even researchers.
Yeah. So we also have the following here. So we have, I'm not going to go through it all there, but you have the Islamic Awareness translation. You have the text from the Quran, or at least the Sahih International, which I know is not a great translation. And we also have the passage as given by Oleg Grabber as well here. Now, just have a look and compare. So here it has, the peace of God was on me the day I was born, and will be the day I shall die, and the day I shall be raised to life. So it's kind of first person. Here it has something similar. The day I was born, the day I will die, etc. In the Islamic Awareness website, peace be upon him the day he was born, and the day he dies, and the day he shall be raised alive. So I asked this, possibly knowing the answer, but in your view, which is the more accurate translation of this passage? Is it first person or third person?
Well, the first one would be, and peace be upon me the day I was born, and the day I die, and the day I will be resurrected alive. Me, it's talking about me, Jesus.
Yeah, so clearly this translation given on the Islamic Awareness website, for whatever reason, they've changed it quite a bit.
But let me tell you that the reason I say this is me, because of the diacritical marks. If you remove it, then it will be peace be upon the day he was born and the day I die. That's why you have to, the Hafs is right. The Hafs is the only way to save it from, it has to be the Jesus speaking. But the translation that you have in the Islamic Awareness is clearly wrong.
Yeah. Cool. So what does the inscription actually say? That's the original. I doubt you can read that one, can you? Because it's missing a lot of the diacriticals, but
I can try. I can
Yeah.
try, but it will not be like some things I can see. Son of Maryam, and the peace is over him. The day and the day he dies. That's the first one. Son of Maryam, peace be upon him, the day he was born, and the day he dies.
Okay, so it sounds like the Islamic awareness is correct then. So they're going for the he.
Yeah, but remember, this is different than the Quran we have today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the inscription, so it's Islamic awareness is given a correct translation there, which is good to see. But it's definitely, if we look back, this is
Yeah, when I see the dots now, it's correct. Yeah, it's talking about he.
Yeah.
No, because of the second line, وَيَوْمَ يُبْعَثُ حَيًّا. No, I mean the one, the inscription.
Yeah.
It's talking about he.
This one.
Yeah, this one is he.
Okay, so it certainly indicates that whatever Quran they've used for the inscription, it's definitely not the Hafs or anything like
Yeah,
Hafs.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely a plus. And I think this is the same again. So it's basically, is it first person or third person? Well, it seems to be that it is third person, but it means that there's a difference there between the Dome of the Rock inscription and the Hafs that we have today.
Yeah, the Hafs is Jesus is talking about himself, and the other one, it's like a narrator is talking about Jesus.
Yeah. So where to next? I think first we need to examine Ottoman era Qurans to see if they have truncated verses at these key points. So it'd be nice to just see if we can find direct hits and confirm everything. So that would be sort of the next step. This truncates the Quranic verse. So this was one of the examples that we saw earlier on. And this one here. So it would be nice for us to kind of look at some Ottoman Qurans and see do we find that same truncation going on. The second thing I think we need to do is we need a definitive translation of the Dome of the Rock inscription that is fully and critically labeled. This ought to be available freely online so that we don't have to depend on an Islamic site that may pull the plug or edit out any telltale signs. Yehuda Nevo's transcription of the inscription might be a good starting point. You know, there's a good chance that his isn't perfect, but it might be a good starting point. This is a task for an Arab specialist, as variant translations can make it difficult to spot variations in the original and also especially truncations. So I think that's what I would suggest. So I'm just going to come back to you there. So overall, I think, are we on the right track, do you think?
Yeah, could you just get not the last slide, but the one before it? I want to show you something that's wrong in every translation. It is something that it's always translated in a wrong way in all the Qurans. It's not. It has nothing to do with what we are saying now, but
Okay.
I think it's a good.
Can you?
Yeah. Do you see here? It says, "He who created death and life, that he may try which one of you is best indeed." This word, which is لِيَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ or لِيَبْلُوكُمْ, it's always translated as try or test. But actually, this word, it's only negative. It means to afflict you, affliction, to put you through very hard times. It doesn't mean try, just try or test. It's to put you through a difficult
it's
time.
just to punish you, essentially.
Yes, because in Arabic, when we say bala, it means not trial, but like a very bad affliction. But they always translate it as try or test in the English so that Allah doesn't appear very cruel.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So imagine in my translation where everywhere you will find this word as afflict, not try.
Yeah.
It will change it.
It's going to be horrible to read that. You'd be like you'd be depressed after reading it. Yeah. Excellent. So I suppose that's all I have. Do you want to share with the viewers what you're up to these days? Have you got any bombshells in the offing?
Well, you see, of course, the people know that now I am translating the Quran, and I am working on a series that I will publish on my channel after the Quran is out. It will be a very good series that has never been done before on this scale on YouTube, but I will not share anything about it now. I am just telling the people that they need not to worry because I am doing very good stuff just in the dark, in the hibernation mode. But the other thing is that people don't know is that years back I was very interested in cancer cure. Now I am not a doctor by any chance, and I have not learned medicine, but I surely like to investigate all the cancer cures that were suppressed over the years and how this disease arose over the years. So I ask very good questions that was there ever cancer before, and why is it so prevalent today? And what are the cures that have been suppressed over the years, and do we actually have a cure? So this starts by the very nature of what is cancer, because I think that how they view it today, just calling it a cell, it's maybe this is the mistake. Just saying cancer cells, maybe this is the mistake if you see it as something different. And this is what all the alternative cures have done and got amazing results, but they were suppressed for a lot of political reasons. So I make a very good investigation about this. It's still like I won't be publishing it anytime soon, but I promise the people that in the future I will at least be taking them a very good step forward to at least understanding the nature of this disease and how it can be cured. You see?
I look forward to that one. Excellent. Okay, so listen, Murad, it's been great to have you. If people want to comment on the video below, obviously this is kind of like a working concept, a hypothesis. It's a starting point of, okay, where are we at? What sort of evidence are we looking for? This is what we'd like to achieve going forward. It's not the final statement by any means. To prove the idea that the inscription is a 16th century work, I think one of the best proof would be to find an Ottoman Quran that lines up with verses as you find in the inscription, particularly the same style of truncation. So that would be the holy grail in terms of where we're going next. The AI is not perfect, so any claims that was made by the AI, you need to take with a fairly large piece of salt. It's a step up from Wikipedia, but it isn't 100% guaranteed because the AI does weird stuff and it gets things confused for whatever reason. It's a relatively new piece of technology, but hopefully it's going to serve our interests in terms of getting to the bottom of everything. So thank you. Murad, any final words?
No, thank you, and I'm very happy with the progress that's currently happening. You can see when we first made the videos on the older channel, sneakers, these ideas were very new, and probably maybe only me and you were talking about such crazy ideas. Now they are going very very wild, and maybe within a few years they will be mainstream.
Yeah.
So this is very good progress that's happening, and I want to ask the people to subscribe to my channel also, Saint Murad, so that in the future they don't miss the series.
Yeah. I actually was remarkably amazed reading Stephen Shoemaker's book, how similar his positions are with the positions that we took consistently over the last 4 or 5 years, to the point that I was pinching myself thinking, has he been looking at our videos or something? Because it's remarkable. It's not just one or two different things. It's quite a lot. Obviously, he is applying the same principles and logic to things as we are doing, but at a much deeper level. And I think it's a good sign. It shows that we're on the right track. What I particularly like about his style is the fact that he's willing to question some of the, the important people in the academic community, and question their assumptions, and not just assume to go along with the consensus, be willing to kind of shake things up. So I think it's a really exciting time. So thank you, Murad, and hope to do this again with you very soon.
Thank you very much for having me.